to another episode of Fireside Chat. It is episode 32. This is going to be like the fourth time in like a week that we've been live. So that's a new record for us. Today, I am your host, Ken. I am a content creator, and I also help with sales in Fitted and Norns. I am joined by Mr. Andrew Balkowskis. He is the wonderful owner of this lovely company. And our special guest today is Mr. Eric Campbell. I'm going to let him introduce himself. So, Mr. Eric Campbell, how are you doing? Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, name's Eric. I'm at 16-bit Eric and across all socials. I am primarily a producer of tabletop RPG Twitch shows and live tabletop RPG content, and a game master. It's still weird to call myself a professional game master, even though that is technically what I am. So, but yes, that's me.
Awesome.
And co-owner of the Streampunks RPG group. Yeah.
Awesome. So, I'm a streamer, so I stream mostly gaming. You're in a different industry. I'm actually curious, how did you start getting into the streaming biz? And how did you get hired by Geek and Sundry? Those are kind of like a very nice question. I would like to know, because it's kind of different from my point of view, being a streamer and knowing kind of how people start streaming. I just want to know your backstory about it.
Yeah. Man, that's a big one. So basically I got into streaming because of Geek and Sundry. When I first got involved with Geek and Sundry, I didn't even know that much about Twitch, and I wasn't really paying attention to it. I feel like I might have been one of those guys that kind of made fun of Twitch a little bit, like, because as somebody who has ADHD, I can't conceive of the idea of watching somebody else play a video game. I want to play it myself. I just want to shove them aside and play it myself.
Same.
So-
Didn't make sense to me either.
Yeah, I was really not. I was like, okay, well, I'm just gonna write that down on a list of things I ain't ever gonna do. But I landed my gig at Geek and Sundry. This was back in the early teen thousands, I guess. But this was during the big influx of web series. So it was shortly after the golden age of the Guild. They were starting to wrap up their show, and I had been trying to get involved more and more as a screenwriter. At the time, I had come out to Los Angeles to be an actor, but my writing is what started taking off, and that's what I started getting noticed for and paid for. So I was like, oh, I'll set the acting aside for now because I'm really enjoying this. So I went the Jack London route instead, and I was at one of my many part-time, like just this crappy part-time job serving coffee, and a woman named Kim Evie came into the coffee shop, and I cracked a geek joke because I'd recognized her. She was one of the executive producers of a company that was called Knights of Good, and which is the company that did the Guild, and we ended up talking geeky stuff, and I told her I was a writer, and she was like, well, we're actually looking for a writer for a show that Felicia Day is doing right now called The Flog, which is like her video blog that she was doing at the time for Geek and Sundry. And she's like, Felicia's completely swamped and simply just does not have time to write these episodes anymore. So if you want to submit some writing projects for us, like samples. And I did. I went ahead and took a chance. She slid me. I still carry the card that she gave me in my wallet because it was such a serendipitous moment. Because it changed my life. I submitted a piece of writing. I didn't hear anything for 6 months, so I was like, well.
Was it similar to what you had written before? Like, what did you write before this? And then how was this different in terms of the type of content that you were writing?
Yeah, what I was writing before, what I specialized in writing was sketch comedy, because the whole reason I got into acting and stuff like that was because I wanted to be, more than anything, I wanted to be a sketch comic. I loved Monty Python, Kids in the Hall, Mr. Show with Bob and David. I loved the more zanier madcap style comedy there was. I wanted to write it and perform it. That's what I was really fascinated in doing. And which it's funny to tell people that today, because I don't come off like that often. But when the camera's off, I can be really obnoxious. But suffice to say, that's what my background was. And up until this point, I had been writing scene works for acting workshops for like 5 years. I'd been doing all these acting workshops where people would sign up for it, and then the coach of the acting workshop would basically pay me to write a bunch of random scenes. He would be like, okay, so I've got this person and this person that I've paired together for their scenes, and I really want to draw them out of their shells. So I want a scene where this needs to happen and this needs to happen. And so I would write out sketches. So like over the course of like 5 years, I shelled out like thousands of pages of like scripts just for these writing workshops, and so that's what led me into it. And so I submitted this writing sample with the goofy, weird, zany, madcap sense of humor that I really enjoy, that Felicia kind of does as
Yeah,
well.
she did.
And I, after 6 months, and this is a beautiful story because I had just gotten dumped by this. I was in an awful relationship, and I had just gotten dumped by this woman who idolized Felicia and was trying to make web series, and she dumped me, telling me I wasn't going anywhere with my life.
Oh,
And then 3 months later,
Wow.
Felicia hired me to be her head writer on her show. So that was sweet. Mwah. That was
that's like the
good.
biggest middle finger. I love
Yep.
that. It's like
Yeah, it was
justice
good.
served, you know? I
It
love
felt good. Yeah. So, and that's how I got involved with Geek and Sundry, and I was a writer for the Flog, and then Felicia hired me again. She really liked what I was doing. She hired me again for another show that she did, and then they brought me back for the Flog, and then I wrote an award show with Lincoln Rhett and Felicia, and I just kept doing more and more work, and then they brought me in to do a show for Geek and Sundry called Signal Boost, and that's when I really got my foot in the door over there. And they had me come in and write in the office, and then there was a big shakeup at GNS. Felicia decided to go become a mom and wanted to step back from all of what she was doing in new media at the time, and some positions opened up, and I was trying I was trying to get in the door, because at this point I was literally just living as like I was working retail and and getting a little bit of money from the writing, but I was still kind of scraping by, so I was desperately trying to get in my foot in the door, because this was Geek and Sundry. This was what I was aspiring to, and I was trying for anything. And I thought maybe I could get in like a lower functionary role, like maybe community manager or something like that. And the day they started filling out positions in the office, they took me upstairs and took me into a room, and they were like, "Hey, so what do you think about being director of development?" And I was like, "Look, I know I'm not supposed to say this." But you do know I have no experience in that, right? And they were like, yeah, no, that's fine. And I was like, great, I'll take it. Yeah, sounds good.
Because that was one of the
And
things at GNS at that time. They were kind of trying out all kinds of things that had never been done before in the space. This was all brand new. These kinds of shows, these kinds of formats, and that's really interesting in terms of what stuck and what didn't stick. It almost felt like there were a lot of ideas that were kind of spitballed and like, let's try this, let's try that, and then see what sticks, what doesn't stick. How quickly did you guys go through like these kinds of ideas to zero in on the gold that you can go long term with, versus the ideas that would this is a dead end, let's just cut this before it goes too far?
yeah, I mean, it was a fascinating period for us over there, because when I first started, the landscape had changed a lot. They were launching their brand new streaming service, Alpha, and it's no secret that Alpha was not when that was announced, the community was not happy, because at the time everyone was trying to figure out how to monetize, like how could they at least break even with this kind of content, because it's not just throwing people up in front of a camera. And this is something I kind of pointed out recently on Twitter, when people got kind of stunned by how much money Critical Role makes after their numbers were leaked on Twitch. And I have to remind people, like, and this was happening during the launch of Alpha 2. There were a lot of people that just thought it was a money play on behalf of Legendary. That's was there were people putting out YouTube videos just like calling us out, like that it was like a money grab, and that they had done all the math and they figured it out, and this was all just a big uh greedy like grab for money, because CR had become so successful at the time. But what it was is it's just the fact that managing a studio with a staff like that played a big role in where we were constrained creatively on what kind of shows we could do. But when we started it up, um, Critical Role had taken off. At that point, it was becoming very clear that there was lightning in a bottle at the company, and that gave us a lot more freedom to, as you said, spitball and kind of throw paint at the canvas and try to find what the community responded to. And I would get really loud about it, because I've been a storyteller and like GM for years and years and years and years, and I knew this crowd really well. Nobody else in the office, save maybe uh, my good friend Sax Carr, was really familiar with it, was really aware of what the tabletop RPG community was like, that was working in the office at the time. Most everybody else was into like sketch comedy, geek culture, pop culture kind of stuff. But I was a tabletop gamer. Oh, and there was my friend Rob too, who was he was the editor at the time, was really big into like board games and tabletop RPGs. So I was kind of jumping up and down and being like, this is what the audience is going to respond to. This is what people are going to really enjoy. It's not that I didn't feel heard or anything, but it took a while to get momentum going and to finally get that stuff going. And what was really exciting is there was a lot of innovation, as you said, that was coming out of it. Like my favorite thing that GNS that wasn't CR, and I'm gonna omit my own projects from this, but my favorite thing that we ever did at GNS as a project that I thought was really innovative and brilliant was our very first season of Dread. I
Yes.
still think I think in particular season 1 of Dread, I think, was our finest hour, producing original, fascinating, like interesting ways of doing tabletop RPG content. And yeah, it was just throwing paint at the canvas and seeing what would stick, and kind of using whatever experience we had to find the way through that. Yeah.
And that's a unique
Wait,
RPG as well, right? So
Hmm.
for those who aren't
Yeah.
familiar, that uses a Jenga tower of blocks to resolve mechanics. So
Hmm.
instead of your typical RPG where you're rolling dice, you've got this massive tower of blocks, and anytime you want to do something that you could potentially fail at, you can either choose to fail, or you have to pull a block, put it on the top, and if the tower collapses, you lose your characters. That's for anyone who hasn't played Dread. It's quite a stressful RPG, and it's a great one to pull out in Halloween when you want that extra horror
Yeah.
genre kind of plugged into the table.
Yeah.
so that sounds like a super fun one. I've never tried it or heard of it. I guess I'm a little younger, so it's kind of, I probably didn't hear it. But
Hmm.
you didn't want to talk about your personal favorite, but I'm going to bring it up. What was your biggest success at the
My
Geek and Sundry?
So my personal biggest so show wise, my personal biggest success was even include and this includes my two shows, my personal shows that I was on was Shield of Tomorrow and Callisto 6, which will be my favorite experiences that I had, period. And I also did Eric's TBD RPG, which has got a funny story behind it, but essentially that ended up becoming a Doctor Who campaign, which was a ton of fun. Um, but by the numbers and looking at what my longest term success was, definitely LA by Night, which we did with Jason Carl and White Wolf. That was probably my biggest personal success. Though Shield of Tomorrow was probably after Critical Role and Talks Machina, Shield of Tomorrow was the most popular show that we did at the time on the channel. So I'm very proud of that one in particular too. Yeah.
So what is with some of them that you tried but didn't do as well? Kind of,
Hmm.
since we're talking about your successful stuff, let's talk about
Hmm.
stuff that didn't go as planned. And what did you really kind of learn from that?
Yeah, because we have a lot of industry people that do listen for the tabletop space, but even here we'll be streaming. So let's say if someone were to go into starting, let's say I want to start a streaming company, what would be one of those endeavors that you guys tried and fell flat, and it was just a huge surprise? You thought it was going to work, and it'd be like a lesson to someone that might be going down the same route.
Hmm. Yeah, it's interesting. This I have so many thoughts on this, but I am covered, so I can't say too much on it. But what I could say is that what I noticed at the time is there seemed to be an instinct to, maybe this is just a personal opinion. I think one of the biggest mistakes people can make when making tabletop RPG content like this, and this is something that I witnessed happen. But I personally think one of the biggest mistakes you can make is overproducing it, and making it too much of a gimmick. Like if you get too gimmicky with it, I think what it comes down to consistently is what the audience absolutely loves to watch in tabletop RPGs is the intimate relationships that are being built at the table between player characters and players themselves. The audience loves watching friends enjoy each other's company. They like feeling like they're there on game night, and they love seeing like the goofy raunchy jokes. They love the feel of a good game night, and they love getting invested in the lives of the characters. Having a great soundtrack and a great set is cool, but if you try to make that as big as the people at the table, it's not going to make any difference.
Or
I think you'll
detracts,
just
maybe detracts from
yeah,
the experience.
yeah, it certainly can if you're not careful. I haven't seen any good examples of where that has been a case, but my take on it is you're just throwing money away.
Hmm.
You're gonna get a great response if it's a great cast
Hmm.
and it's a good, like, it's fascinating that we're talking about this, because this is a question that I pose to my communities to this day, because one of the things that I like to ask people, and this is kind of parallel, is how do you feel about the unbelievable oversaturation of Dungeons and Dragons in the tabletop RPG space? There's so many great indie non D&D games out there that ain't getting that spotlight. And I ask people, like, just out of curiosity, I'm like, as an RPG group, we are not known for playing D&D. We've played everything but, because when I was at Geek and Sundry, D&D was kind of covered,
Yep.
that was done. So I could go off and do other stuff, and we kind of continued that tradition when we left GNS. So I ask my community, if we ever played D&D, would that lessen us in your eyes, or like, would you have a problem if we played D&D? And 9 times out of 10, people respond with, "We don't care what you play. System is great and we would love to see new games, but we're there to watch you guys. We're there to watch the relationships, to follow a good story." And it underscores the fact that I think in our experiences at GNS, and what I see people doing is, this is a personal criticism, and no offense to anybody who worked on the project. I was not involved with it. But my favorite example of just a fantastic production with incredible performance, brilliantly shot, just looked amazing, way better than the budget was, just like fantastic, is Dread Season 2.
Hmm.
And Dread Season 2 is mind-blowing, like how well it was done. And whenever people talk about Dread, they always talk about Dread Season 1,
Oh
which
yeah.
was just shot on a soundstage with a bunch of goofy people, like sitting around a obviously fake fire with Ivan there being big. And it didn't lose the game aspect. It didn't lose the feel of the game aspect. It was not overproduced.
But
That's my personal opinion.
I
what I
do.
think you're saying is absolutely echoed in just the nature of tabletop role playing games. It really
Hmm.
doesn't matter what RPG system you're playing. You could be playing the best RPG system or the worst RPG system, most complex or the least crunchy system. If you've got a good cast of friends around a table with good chemistry, that's the most important thing, and that's
Yeah.
Hmm.
that's what you're going to remember. 20 years from now, that's the memories you forge, not what die you rolled or what card you pulled or what rune you pulled. It's that action that happened between the
Especially
hijinks between the players.
especially when
Hmm.
you're streaming. When you're streaming and you have a good group of friends, it feels like you're part of that group of friends. And so personality is one of the main thing, especially when it comes to streaming, because it doesn't matter what you're playing, people are coming to watch you, and it's very interesting. And not only
Hmm.
that, like, I think once you have a good group of friends, I think the main thing you need is just audio. Once your audio sounds decent enough,
Yes.
right? Like, if you have great setting, gate,
Hmm.
everything, but your audio is absolutely terrible, you're gonna
Mm.
ruin it. So make sure your
Yes.
audio, right? Your group of friends, even if you're alone, I personally enjoy streaming with a group of friends rather than alone. Because when you're alone, you're just talking to yourself. But with a group of friends, you play off each other's energy, and it makes it really fun. And then you get the audio, and then the lighting and all that stuff that can come afterwards. Because as long as you can hear the person, you can kind of see the person, and you're having a great time. That's really all you really need for when it comes to
It's
like production.
100% true. It's the number one thing. And thank you for bringing it up. That was constantly talked about in every production office I've ever been in, and anything that we have ever done with tabletop RPG space. The most important thing has always been audio.
Yep, because if you
It's
can't hear
always been
what's
the most
going on, I mean, you're clicking out, you're going to the next
Mhm,
video, right? But if you can
mhm.
hear it, and then you can kind of imagine what's happening because everyone's running on a half megapixel camera, you can at
Right.
least follow along, right? But if you
Yeah.
Yeah.
can't hear it, it's like game over. Like the door closes immediately.
Hmm. Yeah. And kiss goodbye any chance of making your show more accessible via podcast. It is not gonna. Good luck. Like, if people fall behind, podcasting, pulling the audio and putting it up is a great way to keep people engaged with your show, so they don't fall too far behind and just give up. and which is something that typically happens because let's face it, 3 hours of content a week is a lot to eat, you know?
Yeah.
And there's a lot of shows out there, which means 9 times out of 10, people are going to pick maybe 2 shows to watch a week. And if they can't hear yours, or if they fall behind and they can't catch up, then well, I wonder what Dimension 20 is like, and they're gonna go watch that. You know what I mean? And they're gonna have a great time. It's because they've got great audio and they've got a great cast and a great show. So, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I think audio is just so important, especially in the age where podcast is being listened. I feel like more than ever, right? If you,
Mhm.
a lot of people just, they want to, take the commuting to work or something. And even like for me, I listen to my podcasts in 1.5 speed. I can only listen to maybe 3, maybe 4 a day. I
Mhm.
don't know. That's still a lot of podcasts. But if the audio's bad, I just can't get. I just can't. I just after the
Mhm.
first 5 minutes, it's just no, I can't. And it
Yeah,
sucks
you
because
tune it out.
yeah, even if the content's good, I can't share it to my friend. I can't be like, hey, listen to this. Oh, what is this? This is a potato. You're recording your audio on a potato. And in our day and age, microphones are cheaper and cheaper for great quality. So the fact that
Mhm.
you should be able to get pretty good quality mic, yeah,
Yeah.
I agree. Audio
Ken
number
knows
one.
what he's talking
Mhm.
about. He's been doing it a while. This
Nah.
man.
Yeah, he's
This man.
100% right.
Yep.
Yeah, I think
Yep.
that's the most expensive thing is the microphone. But
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
okay, let's just jump back a little bit to Geek and Sundry.
Mhm.
I kind of want to know what happened to them. What has happened to them? Like
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
that's
Mm.
I'm very curious about that.
The big question, yeah, because I bitterly joke to this day. So GNS developed this horrible, this horrible reputation of, and rightly so. Uh, when shows would go on hiatus, who knows if we were ever going to see them again? And so I kind of jokingly say, Geek and Sundry's gone on hiatus now.
Oh.
Uh, so I don't know. I hope they come back. I really do. I love that Nerdist is still around doing stuff. There's still some really rad people working at Nerdist, and I know that they're kind of like using the GNS accounts to retweet Nerdist articles and stuff. So the brand is still around, and I hope it still works. As to what happened, that's when I run up against the edge of what I obviously can and can't talk about. But
NDA, yeah, for sure.
yeah, I mean, anytime you run into a major studio like that, it's not necessarily like indicative of something terrible having happened. It's just that's part of having the job, and you can't really, you can't even talk about. I don't even think technically I'm allowed to say that I'm NDA'd. Actually, I think it's like one of those kinds of deals. But
No, you didn't say it. You
um,
didn't say it. I said it. I said it. It's okay.
Yeah,
You didn't
yeah.
say it. I
yeah,
said
yeah,
it. We're
yeah,
fine.
We
We're fine. We're
overdubbed
fine.
it in your voice.
yeah,
It's a deep
yeah,
fake.
but suffice to say, yeah, there were just some big changes, and a lot of people ended up leaving, and it's really I can't get into any more detail than that. Which I'm going to be honest with you, it's really tough because that was a really incredibly important part of my life, and um, the experiences and stuff that I had there. I've always wanted to write about it or talk about it, and unfortunately, it's just not something. I run up against it all the time because this kind of stuff that we're talking about now is stuff that I really love sharing with people who are interested in getting more and more involved. And so I wish I could talk more about it. And it certainly is an interesting conversation to talk about how these new media companies are using that platform now and how they can use it successfully. As opposed, you know, when I think I'm thinking specifically right now of G4. Like I'm really interested to see how G4 does because they're rolling out like their stuff looks amazing. They're hiring all the right people. It looks really rad. I'm really curious to see how that evolves and if how they do how their trajectory is and will I see them making some of the same choices that we made. But yeah, but in conclusion on this subject, like yeah, I wish I could tell folks. I really do. I wish I could say what my experiences were, but yeah, it
That's
just
the
kind of
thing with the
faded
tabletop
out.
industry, right? It's a
Mhm.
very like supportive industry. Everyone supports each other. Like what I find in the RPG space that I'm in, we share. Who are the good publishers, who are the bad publishers. You need an editor, I've got a name
Mhm.
for you. You need an artist, I've got an artist for you. Where do you print? You print domestically, overseas. I've got some recommendations for you. Everyone goes to see each other's booths and super happy, big smiles when you see, everyone else
Mm,
getting something big. So it's the same kind of thing here with the Fireside Chat. Is when we can try to get like lessons learned. A lot of people tune in to go, okay, what can we learn about streaming or the industry. So I know you can't
right.
talk more about GNS, but let's talk about
Mm.
Streampunk, right? So
Sure, yeah.
this is your baby, so you can talk a lot more about that. So how did you get this off the ground? Who's involved? What's the mission statement?
Yeah, I mean, so when GNS wrapped up and our experience wrapped up there, my final project actually, heartbreakingly enough, is but by the time I had left as director of development, I was still running Callisto 6. So Callisto 6 kind of became our send off. And when that RPG wrapped and our production ended, um, I started having conversations with my best friend Sam Delev, and we both we both were just talking about, we didn't want it to end. We had found something so wonderful with each other, and the relationships that we had built, the content that we were creating, it wasn't a fluke. Like, we had done well for ourselves. We had found an audience, we had found fans, and we had found themes. Like, we tackled things like the way disability is portrayed in Star Trek, and uh you know uh things like trans rights, and the way disability is presented in cyberpunk, and like really integrating a lot of themes that are relevant to today's stuff to produce stories, human stories that ask big questions and portray people in a very human and powerful way. And we were like, we really don't want to stop doing this. Is it possible to keep doing it? Because at the time, I'll try not to wander too far because I can ramble.
Go
My
ahead.
community calls it the Campbell ramble, because I will just go. But after leaving GNS, I had another thing lined up, and I was being courted by another tabletop RPG company for about 4 months, and then they just ghosted me. It just didn't happen. And so when GNS comes to an end, um, I I really had no idea what I was going to do, and I went kind of to a dark place because GNS was really my first opportunity to step outside and do what I love for a living, which is something that before GNS I kind of got made fun of for it. But all of a sudden there was this identity and this validity attached to it, and I was actually contributing to this beautiful community, and now it's gone. And so we started asking ourselves, does it have to be gone? Can we not just keep doing this? And so Sam and I came up with this idea of uh kicking around the possibility of like forming an LLC. And we knew we weren't going to be big. We're not going to roll out the carpet like CR did or anything. But we were like, maybe we don't need to make a killing, but maybe we can make a living doing this. So we formed this little LLC. We put it all together. We had a fundraiser with the community to cover the cost of forming the LLC. We set a goal and did like a full day's worth of streaming. We set a goal of $5,000 to try to get us up off the ground and get a production budget. And before the end of the day, we had raised 15
That's
from our community.
incredible. Awesome.
So yeah, and that has funded our projects to this day. That was over a summer ago now. So that was
Wow.
a year and a few months ago, and that's still helping us right now.
Ooh,
Get ready for the
cheers.
next campaign.
It's awesome.
Thank you. Yeah, our community is amazing. We call them the Aux Crew. It's a throwback to our fans from Shield of Tomorrow called themselves the Auxiliary Crew, and so we just kept calling them Aux Crew.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, and so we formed Streampunks, and we decided to do a campaign. We did Clear Skies, which is another Star Trek Adventures campaign, and then we wrapped that up pretty recently, and we've decided we're just going to keep going. Like, it seems like this is working, so we're going to keep going. And Clear Skies was sort of our test balloon to see how we fit into the spaces in an independent gaming group and where we're at. And now that we're coming up in 2022 and we're doing things that are not Star Trek, we're asking bigger questions about, like, okay, well, we're not a Star Trek group, we're an RPG group, so what else can we play out there? That kind of stuff. And that's kind of where we're at. That's kind of how that formed. We took a bunch of GNS alumni and asked them to come play with us because we had so much fun. And yeah,
What year was
that's
that?
pretty much.
When did you guys form?
I think technically it must have been it was the summer of 2020, I believe.
Okay, so really
Is when it
recent.
officially
Okay.
Yeah, is when it
Really
officially
recent.
happened.
little over a
Yeah.
year, yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Because I
Just over a year is
remember,
when it officially
15.
happened.
I remember you and I talked at Gen Con 2018, 19
I think it was
at our
9.
booth. Yeah, you guys were
Yeah.
looking for content and sponsors and stuff like
Mhm.
that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I was. Yeah.
I
I
wasn't sure
remember
if it
that.
was with your new company or not. Time we were having
When
that
I
discussion.
Yeah, when I met you, I was still with GNS, and
Okay.
I was I was really trying to use my position at GNS to highlight indie RPG makers
Thank you.
and push that through. Well, Fate of the Norns is such a freaking beautiful I mean, you can ask my community members. I talk about it all the time, which is ironic because I've never gotten to play it.
What?
But like I've
What?
never gotten a chance to I've never gotten a chance to play it, but
Are you going to be at
I
PAX
talk
Unplugged
when is that? I don't know when is
That's
that?
December
next
10th?
week. Yeah, that's like next week. It's in
No.
Philadelphia. Yeah.
I'll reserve
No.
you a seat if you're at PAX Unplugged then.
Hey,
Uh
it's not too late, you know. You have 10 days to get that, you know,
I
everything
I
set.
wish. Yeah. But yeah, and that to kind of carry that over into to sort of finalize what I was talking about stream punks, but that mentality of wanting to highlight and contribute more and get involved and like be a part of the community, that was kind of something that my partner Sam Delev said that really is what made stream punks happen. Um, eh, Sam just one day when I was really insecure. I was like, I don't know, people are going to go for this. Like, I don't know if we're going to get a community that's going to follow us. I mean, people are going to think we're just trying to, I don't know. I don't know if we're going to have the fans are still out there. Everyone's gone off to watch CR and everything else. I don't think they're going to come back. And my whole like anxiety is that without Geek and Sundry, then who's going to care about me? Like, I was never a voiceover actor before this, and I didn't have celebrity status on the internet or anything like that.
But it goes to your previous
People
point. It came down to the personality in front of the camera.
and that's kind of what Sam said. Sam quoted Thor Ragnarok. uh Sam was like, Geek and Sundry is not a place, it's a people.
Mm-hmm.
And that became our mantra to like push ourselves forward, because it's true that brand was a brand where people gathered and enjoyed this, but like it was not like we didn't need that to be who we are. So there's no reason to not, throw the ball. So uh and that's kind of become our mission statement that we kind of keep in the back of our mind right
Mm-hmm.
now. And so yeah, using our platform where we can to like to highlight that stuff. I always talk about Fate of the Norns, and because I'm really big into Norse mythology, and I'm actually in the process of trying to design something like a setting myself that pulls heavily from like Scottish, Norse, like
Well,
cultures and
if you're
stuff like
heading
that.
west, we've got all the Celtic stuff coming out right now. It's
I
rolling
know,
out.
I
So the
saw
Children of
that.
Ariu, and we've got a
So
Kickstarter
cool.
right now with Ed Greenwood with Athcliath, which is Dublin
Mm-hmm.
during the Viking Age.
So
So much
awesome.
to do in there. Like that's something that we've been asked by the fans if we were going to stream like a weekly game, and this has been
Mm.
asked since we stopped our beta test games online. Some people were
Mm-hmm.
tuning into our beta test games, but it wasn't really anything we advertised. It was just kind of like an organic
Right.
thing. And because I was the same kind of thing of you, like who is going to tune into a beta test game? Like who in their right mind would want to watch these guys going like, I use this power. Wait a minute, that's broken. Let's look at the numbers here. This doesn't make
Mm-hmm.
sense. Let's add this up. And they're like, no, like there are people that actually want to watch the
Mm-hmm.
omelet being made. They want to
Yeah, the
watch the eggs
process.
being broken and everything. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm just like, that's insane. And I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm always of the mindset of, we need to finish the game, get it out the door, and then we'll do a polished, like we're playing the game
Mm-hmm.
once everything's finalized, right?
Yeah.
But the problem with me is, as soon as the game's out the door and has hit print, I'm already working on the next manuscript, right?
The next one?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's like I have no time to play the game that's already out. I got to be beta testing and alpha testing the next game that's coming out.
Wait,
Yeah,
okay.
right.
Speaking of streaming games, hear me out, Andrew. How about this? You host a game where you are the Norn and GM, and we get his group to play it. I think that'd be a pretty fun, entertaining one. Just one session. See if you guys would enjoy it. Since you did talk about not having played the game yet, I guess you have considered playing Fate of the Norns, no, you have.
Oh yeah. So I told Andrew the story when I first spoke to him when we were at Gen Con. But the whole way I came into Fate of the Norns was that when I first came into the office at GNS and the changeovers were happening, at the time there was a lot of people had caught on that Geek and Sundry was an excellent avenue to get your game like demoed in front of a live audience. Well, my God, like, I mean, that's what you get at Gen Con, but now you've got a new media company that can reach out across the continent and live demo games for people and an audience that's been captured by the love for CR and all the other gaming content. So as a result of that, we were getting a lot of people sending us board games and stuff, right? And some of the stuff was directly addressed to Will and Felicia. By the time I got there, Will was done with GNS. And Felicia was off becoming a mom, and we would call her up and be like, "Hey, there's some more stuff came in," and she'd be like, I literally don't have room. I'm like taking in all of this stuff, so take whatever you want and distribute the rest of it to the GNS people and blah blah blah." Because she didn't want it to go to waste, and she wanted people to enjoy and appreciate the stuff that was coming in. She didn't want it to just be like thrown in the trash or anything, and so I came in one day and there was this black cardboard box and I pulled it open and there's the Fate of the Norns core book and a bag of stone Futhark runes. And
The
I was
stone
like,
ones, yes, way back.
I
in
was
the
like,
day.
yeah, I was like, my God, what is this? And I was like, and I started reading it and I was like, it doesn't use dice. And
That's
I
a collector's
kept
item
reading.
now.
Yeah. And so I started pulling it all out and I was like, this is amazing. Because there are a lot of great Norse RPG stuff out there. I always point at Journey to Ragnarok, which is the 5th edition adaptation, is a beautiful thing. But the one thing you don't see is people taking both the traditional, like old school art styles of that time period and like or attributing to it, and then using the runes themselves as the storytelling delivery. I was enchanted by that. And I've been like, you can ask Sam, I've been jumping up and down about Fate of the Norns for years because I'm just like, look, I never played this game, but if you want something truly unique, you want to get a good Viking flavored game, I can't imagine a better exploration of that than this game. Um,
And we even have a lighter version that I would even think that would run better on
Faster,
stream, which is Vanguard.
Ooh, oh yeah,
So
yeah,
Vanguard
yeah.
is just like one mechanic that resolves everything. It's a unified mechanic, and it also
Wow.
uses like runes and talent cards. And I think that is an easier medium because what happened was in 2020 we had Children of Air to deliver and had a lot of beta testing to do, and we had to do this on Roll20, and Roll20 and runes do not mix. And so when we tried the first two times, I was just like gun to my head. I'm just like, I can't do this. Like this is just undoable. And then I've had two guys that were techies on the beta test, and they were like, Andrew, give us 2 weeks. We'll write some scripts. We'll do a character sheet. We'll have macros. We'll get everything running. And 2 weeks later, I've got character sheets. I got macros that go between character sheets and your play mats, and they click weird, and runes appear on the board, and hit cleanup. They all go back into your bag, and I was just like,
Wow.
well, now that's a whole change of pace, and all of a sudden we could play this online. And so that was a game changer, but it required that level of sophistication. It wasn't there out of box for Roll20. Now we offer it. Like if anyone's curious, we've got YouTube videos on how to set it up. We've got the character sheets, I think, already in Roll20, and I think the scripts are free downloads.
Too.
There we go. Yes,
the phone app. I got this too, and I'm like, one day I'm gonna play this game, so I'm gonna get the app because it was just so. Man, I can't stress it enough. Like, one of the things that I have seen from a media standpoint of view that has increased the incredible success of D&D is how accessible they have made it with D&D Beyond.
Yeah.
And seeing what Fantasy Flight did with the Genesis system and the Star Wars dice roller and stuff like that. Making games accessible like that is huge. And when you guys came out with an app, I was like, God, I need to play this game. Like, all of this great stuff is coming out for it, and it's ripe. So
yep, and people are looking more and more into like reduced barrier to entry. So even right now with our Athleath box set, one of the things that we want to do is kind of like a free RPG day booklet. It's like just pick it up and away you go. And
that's cool.
It's super easy. Like you're ready to go with a one shot without having to delve into any big books or anything like that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
But Yeah.
Awesome.
We're digressing from your company. Let's
I
get
know.
back to your company now, because
Sorry.
you're our honored guest here.
You get
So
me on a tangent about this stuff, and I'll go. Sorry.
but thank you for the kind words. So
Mm,
I'm curious now. When
mhm,
you and I talked, you were saying if we get your content on Geek and Sundry or whoever you were with at the time, and you were saying
mhm.
we need to monetize this, and so we need to get product or cut a check, or how does this work? So I'm curious, has the business model evolved for streaming content for companies like yours and other people in the space? Have things matured? Have new models come out that benefit both, the publisher and the streamers, things like that?
Yeah, it's really fascinating because I'm now on the other side of it. So, looking to monetize is always the big challenge because our players, we want to be able to pay everybody who comes to play with us so we can support them and they can make our show a priority. And it's so expensive making this stuff. It's so expensive. We're really lucky because we have a community that's supporting us. So up until recently, we haven't had to actively look for sponsorship, and we were kind of in a tough spot because we were playing Star Trek, and you know it not only was it Star Trek, but it was Star Trek that used specialized dice that were only specific to Star Trek. So it made it tricky to go to like dice manufacturers and be like, "Hey, Streampunks can hawk your product." We couldn't do that because they're not making Star Trek dice.
Right.
Little things like that. So, but as a result of that, talking to publishers now, what I'm seeing is that uh, from the other side of it, from the indie side, there is when it doesn't feel like it's changed at all. Because when I
Really?
approach a publisher now and they're like, okay, if I'm going to throw money at you and you're a group, I want to know how many people are watching you. And like, how many numbers does your show do? What are the VOD numbers and what are the live numbers? And, that kind of thing. They want to know, because it's basically you're a commercial for them and they want to know exactly how many people are watching. Um, that was similar when you have a big audience and you're a big studio. There was a gate, there was an entryway, uh there was kind of a gate that you had to pass through if you wanted to use a big audience like a studio's audience, like Geek and Sundry's audience. Then it's I'm not 100% sure, but I think CR does it this way too, where if you want to take advantage of their incredible visibility as a brand, it's forking over money, so they'll demo or advertise for you. That has, from what I've witnessed, that has not changed much, and that's
That's the
just
big studios.
that's
That's the big studios can afford it,
yeah.
so they get more coverage, and the little studios
Hmm.
can't afford it.
Yeah, so we're in a great position because we have some visibility in there and we're not unaffordable. We're the great Diet Coke option of like these big time streams that you see. But we're also very limited on our bandwidth. So we have come across people that want to pay us in product to sell, and we can't do that because we just don't have the bandwidth for it. We don't have we don't have the structure for that. And also, uh, because of the nature of the streaming space as it is right now, uh, pay needs to be pretty consistent, and it needs to be like, for us, we're very lucky because of how many people we have supporting us in our coffee and our Patreon.
Mhm.
I get to pay the players because we've got like about 400 supporters contributing to us, and so I'm able to pay the players monthly,
That's
which is
fantastic.
not yeah, and it's great that I can pay them. It's not ideal. We're not like, I can't pay them per show because we just don't have that kind of money. It would be ideal to pay somebody like, uh, it would be great if the dream is to be able to pay everyone like $200 an episode. That would be wonderful.
Hmm.
That's 200 per player per episode. So the moment I can budget $4,000 a month to my show, that would be great. But
You'll get there.
we're a lot. That'd be right. That'd be great. I shouldn't say $4,000 a month. That's yeah, it's a lot.
I'm
But
sure we'll have
we'll
you on
see.
in a year from now, and we'll look back and you'll be like, "Oh, remember when these little numbers that I was tossing around? Now we've blown
Now,
past them."
That would be great. There's been a lot of discussion between me. So in Stream Punks is me and my co-owner and partner Sam Delev, and then our executive producer Eliza Pearl, and the three of us are always talking about, like, now that we finished off this first year, what's next for us in 2022? Because we ask ourselves, do we want to keep doing this? Like, how sustainable is this, and do we really want to keep doing this? You know, I know we love it, but do we really want to keep throwing in full time? Because it's getting really hard right now as an indie streamer, because the nature of the landscape has changed a lot. The I had a really good friend of mine. This is a little tricky to talk about this, because somebody whoever we all love and respect recently said, kind of reiterated a sentiment that is said a lot, I think, by some of the top tier people that are streaming these wonderfully beautiful productions and whatnot. Which is there's this sentiment that I've heard since we were at GNS, which is the rising tide raises all ships, and it's a great sentiment. I personally have not seen evidence that this is true, and I'm not saying this from a place of bitterness. It's just an observation. What I've noticed is, like, you have Critical Role, and then you have Dimension 20, and you have Battle for Beyond, and all these great shows that look amazing, that have amazing people on them, and have amazing stories. Like, they are absolutely worth watching. They're fantastic shows. And as I said before, like, people are only going to consume 3 hours of content a week, and there's all these amazing shows coming out. So people are going to probably pick maybe 2 shows to watch.
I think it's a
And
differentiator. You need to. I think
yeah.
it's the market's getting crowded,
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
you know, how do you stand out from everyone else? What do you do that's different, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's
That's
the
a
key.
big part of the. Yeah, and so it becomes a tricky dance, because you start asking yourself, well, you know, I've got to make sure that whatever I do isn't just to stand out. It has to be a passion project too.
Mm.
And this came up with me. I started stressing, and this is what led me to asking my community, "What are your thoughts on D&D?" Because I was like, "Can we ever play D&D?" Because I was like, "It'd be nice to play it someday." I love D&D. That's how I got started. But am I just going to get lost in the noise? There's so many amazing shows with brilliant people on them right now, and there's not a trickle down from those shows to the indie spaces. There's a lot of wonderful people that we have that watch us and Critical Role, or watch us and Dimension 20, but I don't I don't see I don't see a situation where people who are not part of these big, awesome, amazing productions. Um, I don't see a situation where people in sort of the more indie space like us are benefiting from it. I don't see a trickle down at all. Again, not saying that from a place of cynicism or negativity or anything. It's just an observation that I've made.
Mm-hmm.
And so, as a result of that, to bring us back to the question at hand, getting sponsorships becomes incredibly important, but also a catch 22, because they want to see audience numbers. And um, I just want to tell them, like, sorry, you need to take a risk on us. But I can tell you that we're a bunch of GNS alumni. We have our names out there in the community, but what adds validity to a streamer is seeing somebody who's got some backing behind it. Like, people really thought highly of Stream Punks. It really caught people's attention when they saw that we were partnered with Star Trek Online and Modifius.
Yep.
Because they were like, oh, I'm gonna check this out. You know? But but that's gonna do well for both sides.
Yeah.
But it gets tricky, because I want to go to these companies that have money and be like, Stream Punks can do well for you, but if you want to see evidence of that, the truth of the matter is we don't have the booster rocket that is required to get you. All I can do is show you our resume, who we are, and what we're capable of. And I just don't think people are really ready to take those risks. They're like, yes, or
And the
I can
timing's
use this
tough.
money to.
And the timing's tough because
Mhm.
it's the pandemic, right? So our industry got
Yeah.
slammed during the pandemic,
Mhm.
right? So if you got to think about
Mhm.
all these publishers, there have been no conventions for 18 months, right? Everything has been shut
Yeah.
down. The stores, a lot of stores have been curbside pickup, no in-store games, right? A lot of the
Yeah.
publishers also have like in-store games to keep their brand in front of the eyes of
Mhm.
players, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
even distributors stop ordering because the stores aren't ordering, right? So it's just, yeah, it's a pretty tough period to start pivoting a business on, because the pockets are
Yeah.
deep right now for your
Mhm.
clients, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Go
Sorry.
ahead.
Yeah, and streaming platforms and content creation in general, I feel like the sentiment you have, where I don't think it's a good observation, because I feel like people on top stay on top, and all the other people who are trying to join in, you obviously saturated. It's tough. It's
Hmm.
hard if I have the same issue, right, as a content creator, and not in the same platform. I'm in a gaming platform where you kind of have to like try to figure out what you want to do. If you can be unique enough, but also still entertaining and still enjoy it, and that's just in general in all type of content creation. If you're a big streamer, you're gonna stay big. That's not being said that you can't join into the field by being
Hmm.
unique and different, but that's just one of the hardship of streaming and making content, is that
Yeah.
if you're one of the smaller ones, you kind of have to go with sponsorships. And yeah, it's true, because sponsorship will always want to look at numbers. That's just how it is for them. Ultimately, is, will I
Hmm.
get my return investment? And that's just a situation. And I do agree, like that's definitely something that's happening right now. Like I have a lot of friends that they're like the top of the top, and they can make content about anything and they'll still do well. So yeah.
Hmm. Yeah, I think there is a way for the top to help and do the rising tide raises all ships sentiment. I think there's a way to enact it, but I don't think it's going to happen because there's just the bandwidth issues. Like it would really help to get signal boosted from time to time, or just like if you enjoyed this, try this. They're under no obligation to do that, and they're busy promoting their own stuff because
That's
it's a really rough thing. You have to constantly be driving your brand forward, and like so there's no reason to have an expectation that that's ever going to happen. I hope that there's a time someday where more indie creators are being spotlit because
Well, this is the
I
whole
would
point
say
of the fireside chat. Like something like this is
right.
we have
Hmm.
guests on to boost your signal, to boost the previous week's guest signal, to have their projects showcased, and
Hmm.
that's important. It's like, I want everyone to do well. I realize that in the last year and a half, it's been so tough on our industry, and this is how this all began. Was
Yeah.
I was suffering as my company, and I saw other people. Some people close their doors in the last 18 months
Right.
in my industry,
Hmm.
and I said, like, how do we keep this thing alive? And this is where the fireside chat came out of. First of all, it was just me and my staff to get together and chat and kind of like, okay, let's just keep morale going, keep the blues away. Then we said,
Right.
let's get some industry peeps that we like and we enjoy talking to on here, get them on the stream,
Hmm.
have them talk about their projects and their products. And then it's been snowballing since, man. I don't think we're the only ones doing that. I think tons of other people that do that as well.
Hmm.
And I think that's one of the silver linings in the indie side of the industry, which is we do look out for each other and try to help each other. But I
Right.
guess, yeah, there might be the ones that are like once you get past that certain boutique indie studio, you get into the corporate exec level where it's just Excel spreadsheets and forget about the rest of the community. Is just the bottom line. What are the
Well,
numbers, right?
yeah, I mean, it's what I love is talking to you guys about this because my impression, at least in some regard, over the past couple of years, is there is a communication divide between publisher and streamer. It seems in that publishers, y'all are really focused on putting out good games, and streamers are really focused on creating entertaining shows based around the games that are being published. And the funny thing is there's so much to be gained by working together, but it's been difficult to find. This was something I've been jumping up and down about this for ages, but like when it comes to sponsorship, it is not lost on me. Publishers don't have a lot of money to sponsor shows. It's not like no one goes. I am fully aware that no one goes into tabletop RPG publication in the indie circuit because they're going to make bank. No one's going to be like, yeah, this is how I'll get rich.
We're not
Like,
driving to the conventions in our Bentagas and Lambos.
right. Yeah. And I was always saying like, you can't go to a publisher that's not, Watsy or Paizo and be like, hey, listen, we need 20K if we're going to do this show because this is how much all of the assets and sound and set and cast and all of this is going to cost. So I was like, you can't do that. You can't go to Paradox Entertainment and say, give me 10K for a new vampire show unless I've got a lot of stuff to do, like to show for what's going on. But like this was a thing. Even Monty Cook Games, like we made sure, like we're gonna try to find a way to work together that'll benefit us, and that will be manageable for a publisher to sponsor us in any way that we can, because it helps us all out when we're working together like that. But um, it is an interesting time. It's a really fascinating change in the ecosystem as a tabletop streamer and how it's developing, because there's other players coming into the field now,
Hmm.
like Demiplane. I'm super excited by Demiplane and what they're doing. They're an alternative to D&D Beyond, and D&D Beyond's been doing great stuff. So now there's a new player coming in, and Demiplane is sponsoring new stuff. They're getting more involved. We're doing a show for Pathfinder over there, which is really exciting. And my good friend B. Dave Walters is the content creator over there, and I'm really curious as how the landscape continues to shape up in 2022. Really interested,
Yeah,
especially with G4. Yeah,
totally agree. All right, so I'm gonna jump back. We're to talk. So we're
yeah,
gonna start talking more about streaming stuff.
yeah.
Enough about the finance stuff. All right, so
Sure.
when it comes to streaming, how do you choose what game, and how do you choose the cast or the people that join those games? I'm
Ooh,
actually kind of
good
curious about
questions.
those.
Good
Good
question.
questions. Yeah. Choosing the game. It's wonderful that you're asking this, because this has been my girlfriend Jody Hauser. She's a comic book writer, and she has had to put up with me for the past year and a half, agonizing over choosing games to run, because of the very issues that Andrew brought up. Playing a game that stands out versus playing what I want to play, and there's an anxiety, a creative anxiety that gets really into that. I choose games based off of things that are things that I can picture, that I can imagine, things that I can. I don't know how else to explain it without it sounding super corny, but I listen to music, and if I can feel the game, I want to run it. I don't know how else to explain it.
If a story starts
Um,
coalescing in your brain when you start reading the rule
scenes.
book or
Mhm.
whatnot, yeah.
Accents will start forming in my head, or scenes will start playing out, or I'll start picturing, I'll start thinking about how frigid air almost hurts when you breathe it in too sharp, as you're staring at the tops of snow-covered pine trees just as a raven flies by. Things like that. I'll start invoking images, and think, who lives here?
Sounds
How
like
do
a
they live
Viking
here?
game in the works.
Oh, totally. I think about it all the time. Like, we have a just to give you we have a I'll talk about this in a second, because I hadn't brought it up yet. But that's what gets me going creatively. I start asking myself, like, what could I do and say about a certain setting? Like, we did Cyberpunk, and I was like, let's talk about the way disability is constantly portrayed in Cyberpunk, because it's a problem.
Yeah.
And Sam Delev, my partner, is a wheeler. They're a chair user, and they're a wheeler, and they wanted to tackle that too. They're like, yeah, let's deal with this.
That's great.
Um, it's really great. And when it comes to casting, uh, it is imperative for us at Streampunks, and this is becoming an industry standard now, thankfully. But it is super important to us at the table to be a table of diversity and voice. Like, we don't try to hit the button. We just want to get players that we want we want the stories that we're telling to represent everybody who's watching. That's all of us. That's
Mhm.
trans. That's people of color. That's like across the spectrum. We want that into our games, because the human experience has to be the storytelling. It has to be the heart of the storytelling experience.
Yeah, you have to be able
And
to connect yourself at the table, right?
yes, absolutely, 100%. I will say that uh, as a funny side note, it has, as a bearded white dude in the streaming space. I've done so much learning over the past couple of years. Um, and just as a sidebar, like, choosing games, I'll tell you a story that I got asked is like, what's one of your favorite tabletop RPGs ever? And one of my first answers, because I absolutely love it to death, and it's still one of my favorite experiences growing up, is Legend of the Five Rings. Would I ever run that? No, I would never run that on the stream. I was like, I'm like, hey, you want to ask Erica Ishii if she wants to run that on stream, and maybe I'll play. But no, I'm not gonna. I am as a white content creator, I am not going to stand in front of a stream and portray Game of Thrones feudal Japan, and just so those are things that go into it too. I think about stuff like that. Free League Publishing has a fantastic game called Coriolis that's based on Arabian Nights set in space. Do I feel comfortable running that? Not really. Like I think about stuff like that because I want to make sure that if that is going to be the content of the game, then the right people need to be telling the story so that we can all experience it the right way and so that representation can be done appropriately. Critical Role just kind of went through a little bit of that, but they're doing some really fascinating work over at CR with their new game setting, and I'm watching with curiosity of how they're doing it. I trust those guys, so I'm really watching what they're doing. So that comes into like casting and the games that I'm choosing. I look at all of that because there might be a day where I want to play some of these games, but there are games that I'm okay playing in a home game and games I would not live stream because I'm like, no, because I'm representing now. Like this is on a platform.
Yep.
Voice needs to be given to other things. So but in conclusion, this is something that we're tackling right now. We're developing our own original world with Sam Delev, because there's been a lot of discussion of how disability is portrayed in fantasy now. And D&D, there's been a lot of people in the indie space that have been talking about the combat wheelchair, which has made its rounds in D&D. And we came up with a game called, we called it They Rode on Wolf. And it is a setting that it follows the descendants of refugees who, when the Fimbulventr started coming and Ragnarok is at hand, in an act of desperation, families got on their longships and just sailed out to sea to try to find some place where food was and people weren't killing each other, and braved the waves so that, braved the world serpent and tried to find a place to survive, and managed to find a land on the edge of Midgard that is only been touched by the snows. It has not, and so this has become like a story of refugees fleeing to this faraway land on the edge of the world where all of the different areas of the world tree have come into play. And Sam has a lot of thoughts about disability and playing disabled characters in the game. They have played disabled characters. They have played non-disabled characters. Their character in Callisto 6 was a chair user. Their character in Clear Skies, our last Star Trek game, was not. We wanted to play a disabled character, and so in this one, so we developed a story where they have a wolf that has mysteriously shown up, and this is supposedly after Ragnarok. A wolf has mysteriously shown up that can see through Sam's character's eyes, and Sam has a bond to it and uses this wolf as their mobility device. This is their combat wheelchair. And there's no explanation as to why it's happened. But people around Sam's character are terrified because they think this is a sign of this. Like, is Sam's character a child of Loki? Like, why is this wolf, this wolf, like associating with this character and responding to it? And further, the wolf has been killed many times, either by bear attack or like the community freaking out about it, and comes back and reappears on the horizon like the next day. So there's fear and trepidation, and there's a mystery and all of this stuff, and we're building that. And the reason why I'm telling it all this isn't just to promote it, but like
I like it.
It
sounds
to,
good.
Thank you. Yeah, it's a world we're developing. It's really new, and we're doing it because we have run into an issue where we have found and in all seriousness, not just paying lip service, present company is totally excluded from this because everything I've read from the stuff that y'all have published has been great. We have a tendency of running into tabletop RPGs that we fall deeply in love with, and then we'll get to like chapter 7 and something is there that just makes us go, come on. Like, why did you go there? Like, you were doing so well. Like, why is it Sam, this is all part of the process of like picking what games we're going to play. Sam has this thing that they do where they pick up and everyone has been guilty of this one, but a lot of people don't realize that using the word cripple is kind of a dirty word in the disabled community. People kind of are shocked to hear that because of how often we use that to describe things.
Yeah,
But
something is
Sam
crippled.
yeah. and Sam tries to point out that, like, yeah, that's not great. That's the word that has that is something that Sam constantly brings up. So Sam does this thing where the moment they get a new RPG, it's kind of a game we play. They go into the PDF and they type in the word
Control
to see
F.
how many to see how many pages we get into the RPG before we find the word. And that's not a make or break, but that's just an example of, like, one of the things that we look at when we're picking a game is we look at, like,
It's a learning experience, though, because it's like the
totally
goal. A lot of people are just unaware of that, and then
totally
it's all about adjusting once you're aware.
And we don't pass judgment. The only time we kind of roll our eyes is when it's really bad, like really, really bad. But that word appears everywhere. Like, it's all over the place. And so we kind of make a joke out of it, but to the point is that when we're picking RPGs, we definitely try to find ones that don't have red flags. And we also, no joke, we also kind of look at the publisher. And in the tabletop streaming space, especially with our audience, I personally, when I'm picking a game that I want to play, I'll look at the publisher and I'll look at things the publisher has said to make sure I'm not about to start promoting somebody who's, like, sorry if this is getting a little incendiary, but maybe wearing a red hat or you know what I mean? Like, little things like that. People who are, like, actively promoting stuff that are not in line with who we are. And that's something that I've had to learn how to do. There's been a couple instances where I'd start getting really into a game, and then I'd look at the community that's around that game, and I'd be like, okay, well, I don't think they're gonna like us playing that. And then I'd see something the publisher said, and I'd be like, all right, yeah, no, it's not gonna work out too well for us. So all these little factors come into play when you're gonna live stream a game. You want to make sure it represents the community. You want to make sure that, plus, it's great to, like, bring your friends in who are diverse to come play with us. It's great because it just enriches the story. And off the last thing I'll say, because I know I've been talking about this one for a hot minute, but the last thing I'll say is one of the things that works really well for me is I have ADHD, and it works really well for me if I can learn a game pretty well. If it's, like, really accessible, the rules are easy to learn, and even if they're crunchy, if, like, it's something that I can get a hold of and run easily. That's big answer to a very simple question, but yeah, that's what I look
okay.
for.
Very, very insightful. I actually never consider that when you're, like, role playing and you don't want to, like, poorly represent someone, so that's why you don't choose it. I've never considered it, so that's very, very insightful. We are indeed running out of time. I wouldn't for our editor to have to edit a 2-hour long. We can talk, but I will ask you one last question before we get on to near the end, and we'll probably take a few questions from the chat if they want to add. But
yeah, chat looks pretty active tonight.
Exactly. So what do you have planned for 2022? Is anything you would like to tell us, share with us, promote? I think that's the main thing. We want to promote your stuff as well. And then we'll ask some of the questions from the chat before we end it.
Okay, yeah. So Streampunks is launching its new campaign in 2022, but we haven't announced it yet. It's still in development. And this is a big deal for us because it's our first non-Star Trek campaign outside of GNS. We're not, like, calling back to the old days. We're doing something new. So I'm really excited about that. So we'll be announcing that. My hope is we'll announce that on our social channels by the end of December, but we'll see. It might be January. So if y'all are fans of ours and are watching, please don't go anywhere. I swear we're making stuff. It's going to happen. We have the Pathfinder show that's coming up over on Demiplane. It's called The Claw Firm, Feather, Whisker, and Claw. And that literally, we came up with the name for that after Mark Meir, who did the voice of Commander Shepard. He's running this game. And he asked us, he was like, so what races do you all want to play? And we all gave him, and we were like, wow, we're all animals. Like, we all chose mice and foxes, and, like, I'm like, all right, how many furries are in this group? Be honest, like, it's okay, no one's judging. But, like, it turns out we ended up looking like some kind of Disney show. So somebody made the wisecrack the Claw Firm, and we're like, oh, I think that's what we are. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
That's how that happens.
That's
so
pretty impressive.
So the
You guys
Claw
are gonna have
Firm,
to check
Feather,
out
Whisker, and Claw.
This one, Vanguard.
Oh, cool.
Anthropomorphic
I've
animals.
seen that. What is it? Viking? Is it set in the Viking?
Yes,
Yep.
with anthropomorphic animals. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's like I hear
How did I not
anthropomorphic
know about
animals, and this is the one that I was talking about with the unified mechanic that just runs itself. It's It's
Oh,
it's
no.
collaborative storytelling too.
I'm buying this the moment the stream is done. Um, so Claw Firm is done, and that's coming up. And then lastly, the one we have planned is an indie RPG that is very important to me called Descent into Midnight, which is done by a few of our small time indie stream our indie publisher friends. With quick backstory. I was on the path of becoming a oceanographer or possibly a marine biologist before I got into all of this. And then I ended up writing about nature instead.
Oh.
But the people that made Descent into Midnight are environmentalists and marine biologists. And they created an RPG that's coming out on the Powered by the Apocalypse system that I got to play at Gen Con like 2 years ago.
That's cool.
And it's great. And they came up with a really great idea. We coordinated with them, and they made, in order to help sponsor us, they made unlocking episodes of the Streampunks one of their Kickstarter stretch goals for the game, which was great. And it sponsored, so we have 6 episodes coming
That's
up.
an idea. Hold on.
Yeah,
Yeah, we got a Kickstarter running right now. Maybe we have
hey.
a stretch goal with running something on your channel.
That would be great. Yeah. And it was
right.
great because it means we got that paid for, and it was really awesome.
I like
we
that. That's a great idea.
So that's all we have right now announced. And then of course on our private channels, on our Discord private channels that you have access to if you're a coffee supporter, we have They Wrote on Wolf, and then my friend Eliza runs her show Metagame, where they do board games and stuff. That's all the stuff I've got coming up. Sorry
nice.
that's
That's awesome.
That's awesome.
That sounds like a crazy 2022, man.
Yeah, it's gonna be a lot.
That's
no, but I
super
like that
exciting.
idea with stretch goals, because that was one of the things I was thinking about, the monetization, right? How do we pay for these episodes? And you were saying the bandwidth. You guys didn't have the bandwidth to run a store and sell product.
Yeah.
But that's great, because we're running a Kickstarter right now. So if we get into stretch goals, chat, there's a Kickstarter right now.
Yeah, we would blow that up all over socials for an opportunity to do that.
Let's do it. I'll throw it in there. I would love to have
that would be awesome.
The City of Athleath on your channel.
100%. That would be totally awesome.
Let's make it happen.
That over 2 times. Yeah, 100%. I'm down.
I linked the Kickstarter. It's gonna be there.
Awesome.
So yeah, that'd be awesome. Honestly, that way we have a game run if we reach that stretch goal. But chat, if you guys want to ask some last minute questions, we'll try our best to answer it.
Yep.
But yes, if you guys would like to ask anything, Fader, shout it out on TikTok about the Kickstarter as well. Yes, Andrew, use TikTok, right?
TikTok. What's TikTok? Tic-tac-toe? Is this like a game?
Yeah.
You need a pencil and paper?
Also, real quick, well, if any questions are coming in, but like real quick, I just wanted to thank you guys because Andrew, Ken, y'all are asking great questions. There is stuff here that I've always wanted to talk about. I never have a platform to do it, and I really appreciate it because this is great. I really appreciate it.
I love having
Thanks
you
for
on.
having me
Like,
on, yeah.
we definitely pull this to 2 hours, but our video editor is like so pressed for
Which is
time.
cool.
We've got this like backlog, because what we do is after Twitch, we try to put this on our YouTube channel. And so when we were going over like to 2-hour episodes and 3-hour episodes, he was like, I don't know when I'm going to get these things onto YouTube for you guys. So
yeah,
we're trying to be a little bit more disciplined. So let's go to chat.
Yep. Tabletop Santa asks, what is Eric's most crunchy RPG in his opinion, and why is it Outbreak Undead?
Oh,
you got me. You got me. You had me in the first half.
That's great. No joke. That's not even the crunchiest RPG I played. The crunchiest RPG that I have attempted to play was a real like gritty game. It was called Polaris. It was a French RPG that was published here in the United States years ago. The books were stunning, and it all took place underwater. It was an undersea campaign. And making a character in that game, holy hell, was like, that was a 3-hour session. It's like old school.
Only
Shadowrun,
3 hours?
like, yeah.
So I would toss into the ring Dangerous Journeys by Gary Gygax, his last RPG,
Really?
where you need a doctorate in being a role player. There are 36 attributes. Your starting character starts with like 26 to 30 skills. And if you're a spellcaster, you're looking at 45 to 65 spells starting out of the gate.
Wow.
It was just it was days of creating a character.
I'll have to ask Luke about that. That's amazing. Wow.
All right. Next question is from I am Puddleglum. As a GM, What was your favorite moment in game that surprised you or made you go back and redo where you thought the story might be going?
Oh man. Um there have been so many instances where my players have thrown me for a loop. Let's see. My favorite moments in a game that surprised me. I think I bring this up every time a question like this gets posed, but there is one episode of RPG that I always go back to, and it's actually become such a legendary moment for us in our group that it's become vernacular. We have like a word for it. And Gina will my friend Gina DeVivo will throw this at me from time to time when I'm getting anxious about running things. But there was a session of Callisto 6 I will never forget where right before we went live, I was just a ball of anxiety. And it was an episode where we were spotlighting Gina's character. And I had to tell everybody right before we went live, uh, I was like, guys, I don't know how else to say this. I got nothing prepared tonight. Like, I got absolutely nothing. And so we're just going to go. And Gina's like, yep, let's go. Let's do it. So the episode became known as Hawk's Board, and it was about Gina's character, her character reconciling the death of a boyfriend at a young age and rescuing her younger sibling from the life that took from going into the life that took his life and risking her life. And at the very end of the, like, it was just from start to finish, it was a moving emotional episode. At the very end of the episode, the opponent that they were racing each other on these hoverboards on a mag rail in futuristic Los Angeles, and a train was coming up on them. And her opponent at the very end, who had been talking smack about her and being rude to her this whole time, at the very end, her opponent falls off her board and is in the path of the train. And I gave Gina this character, like, this is all just on the fly, and I gave Gina's character this choice that she had to make, and she grabbed the character and like saved her, and she saw that Hawk's board, the board of her ex that had passed away, that she had been using in this race, was still on the tracks, and the train was about to hit it. She had to make a choice, and she watched the board get destroyed and saved this woman's life. And oh god, I'm getting emotional just thinking about it. Um, but it was just this incredible moment, a completely unplanned start to finish, and became one of the most memorable moments we've ever had at the gaming table. And now whenever we get into like a place of anxiety of like, oh god, are we going to be okay? We don't have anything planned, we don't know what we're doing. Genus just says, let's Hawksboard this, and all of us are like, that's become our story. Yeah, it is in my
That's
opinion, with
awesome.
all the great episodes we have, that was our best episode of C6 that night, I
That
think.
is
Yeah.
that is awesome. All right, we'll just take two more questions. We have Adriosa. What is all of our y'all's favorite part of tabletop conventions? I can go first. I love I love seeing all the people I see at every convention and just being able to see how they're doing after every time. Like every time we go to the same convention every year, just catching up with everybody. And also, I love drinking with Andrew. You know, that's just one extra thing. But it's always a fun
Drink? What's that?
time.
Um,
uh
I'll say
I don't know.
it's connecting with the fans. I absolutely love seeing all the fans coming by the booth. We talk about the wacky adventures they've had, the fun that they had reading the books, talking about what's coming up next, and running games. Like people are astonished at how many hours of gaming I will run during a convention. So we were just at GaryCon. I ran 9 to 6 every single day. Took 2 hours for supper and went 8 to midnight. There's
Amazing.
every single day. And
You're a
like
sight
I
line.
love it. I absolutely love it. Like I feed off the fans. Like we just have such great memories. And we're gonna be doing that at PAX U, so see you there. And
um
you?
I have, yeah, I mean, my very first Gen Con was only a few years ago, and we were recognizable on the floor from Shield of Tomorrow, and it was so surreal to get stopped by people and sign books. That was so surreal. It was really weird. And we did a book signing and stuff. I got to experience Gen Con on multiple levels because I got to be around the CR crowd, and they're like the Beatles at Gen Con. And being around that, but then being in our little quiet space, all of the experiences of walking past gamers, the two things that stand out to me the most from all the wacky experiences I've had is I love meeting publishers because they're like rock stars to me, and I want to talk to the people that are crafting the worlds that I adore. And I will never forget. Uh, walking through a hotel lobby at 3:40 in the morning and walking past a door of people who had been playing BattleTech for like 16 hours. And they were laughing and drinking. They were not stopping anytime soon. They were in the middle of a battle that just was not ending. And they were cracking jokes and they were exhausted. They looked like hell and they were gaming their damn head. And it was it was so nice to see like a diverse table of like tabletop war gamers just
Nice.
enjoying each other's company. I had a moment where I almost got a little emotional saying it. I was like, Gen Con is just, I'm sorry. I know there's a lot of great conventions out there. People talk about Comic-Con and stuff like that. I'm like, I'm sorry. I know Dragon Con's big, but Gen Con has just got a special place in my heart. I just loved that. It was so, I need to go to Gary Con.
You need to do Gary Con. That's the one I've been plugging. I absolutely love Gary Con now.
Luke has us going to Gary Con because we do Gax Pack on Sundays. It'll be starting next year, which I totally forgot which is ridiculous because Adriosa is in that game with me and I should have included that.
So wait, I'm going to see you at Gary Con then.
Yeah, you'll definitely see me at Gary Con. I will be
there. Well, there you go. I'll be running my 16-hour games.
Excellent. I'm in.
All right. So last question. This is by Rogan. He just says, what would be your dream to run if money wasn't a consideration?
Oh, God. This is kind of a cop out of this is not a great answer. Okay. If money wasn't a consideration, if I could do whatever the hell I'd wanted, I would want to snag one of the major television IP RPGs that have come out and do, because then I could do my own show of the property. It would be really cool. Like I'm eyeing Free League's Blade Runner. They announced that, so I'm eyeing that because that is a world that needs some modernizing and updating.
Mm-hmm.
But like honestly, if not one of those big IPs, and I'm not just saying this because of the company I'm in, but because it's my passion right now and what I'm kind of toying with and developing. Yes, I would absolutely, and the reason why is because over the course of the pandemic, one of the things that I did kept keeping me sane was I decided to start getting really deep into my Irish Scottish heritage.
Oh,
I'm Irish. My family's last name is Foy, but the family I'm adopted into is Campbell. So I've been getting really deep into like family history, and that led me to getting interested in like the Shetland Islands and like where Norse culture crossed over into Scotland, and that has gotten me super fascinated about my personal heritages. And I know.
Have you seen this, baby?
Have
you seen this, baby?
I'm going to be buying that. I've been so if money wasn't an issue,
we're moving into Celtic now. Oh, it's so much fun.
I know.
It's right up your aisle then.
I would basically do like the Vikings TV show production level of an RPG, but not going crazy on set, obviously, or anything like that. I said before, but like that's what I would do. I would do an original. And go all out. It would be great.
And if money wasn't an issue, I'd hire this man to run an entire year of our games. Let's make this happen. We've got a Kickstarter.
2 years from now.
Let's get this man running it with our stretch goals. We can make this happen. This is the meeting of Smith and Wesson right here.
That'd be great. That'd be awesome.
Fantastic. All right. Thank you so much, Eric, for joining us.
Thank you.
Always a blast to have you. I'm just happy that I had another streamer for once on rather than
right
industry people. So thank you very much. Again, we will be at GaryCon, but we will also be at PAX Unplugged. So we will see you at GaryCon in 2022. Thank you so much. Andrew, thank you for being awesome and for letting me host this. And
you're an awesome host.
You guys been great and awesome, and have a great night. We're just going to grab a drink. Let's scold. Cheers.
Everyone,
Everyone,
Skål!
have a drink. Skål!
Skål!